Hey everyone, today I'm happy to welcome Stephanie Barron Hall. Stephanie is an Enneagram coach, author of The Enneagram in Love and Enneagram in Real Life. She's a speaker and host of the Enneagram in Real Life podcast. Through her coaching, writing, and workshops, Stephanie helps people move beyond simply understanding the Enneagram to applying it in practical ways that strengthen relationships, improve communication, and foster personal growth. At this year's Enneagram Las Vegas Community Gathering, Stephanie will be presenting Thresholds, where the people you love get on your last nerve. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. So the title of your workshop is Thresholds, why the people that you love get on your last nerve and what to do about it. I love that title, by the way. It's so intriguing because it's very relatable. What inspired this workshop?
Well, I think the key way that a lot of people use the Enneagram and come to the Enneagram really is to work on relationships and to understand what's going on in my life and, what makes other people tick. I mean, I know for myself, a lot of the people I encounter online, they want to figure out how to communicate better. They want to figure out what's going on with their partnerships or their roommates or their friends or whatever else might be happening. So I wanted to kind of relate with those people who are coming and they're like, you know, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with us and helping them to figure that out and how to work together a little bit better.
Why do people we love get on our last nerve? Can
Yeah.
you talk to that for a minute?
I think it's just the familiarity, right? It's like that person, they do that same thing again, right? I think that there's that aspect of it. When you think of that, you're not necessarily thinking that anyone is bad or wrong either. You're not thinking, oh, we have conflict and it's horrible and it's going to end the relationship. You're just like, I'm just annoyed or I'm just irritated.
Mhm.
And that I feel is very normal and should be normalized. And it also tells us something.
You also mentioned thresholds, use the word in your title.
Mhm.
What do you mean by that exactly? How did those moments show up in relationships?
So, thresholds really refers to this concept that I started teaching a few years ago because I was in a workshop where I predominantly teach in corporate spaces. So, I'll go in and I'll talk about their communication environment and how they can work together better. And so, I was working with this team, and one of them was just like, I have this experience all the time where I'm thinking that we had a great conversation and the other person walks away crying and I don't understand why that happens. So this guy was an 8. And what I thought of in that moment is like 8s have a different threshold for what feels like conflict. So say their conflict threshold's up here and the other person, it's down here. So anything above here feels like conflict for the 8, but anything above this line feels like conflict for the other person. Well, if you have a conversation right here, the 8 thinks we had a great conversation. And the other person thinks, oh no, we're in a fight. Or, oh no, that really upset me. That hurt my feelings. There is big conflict there. And so this thresholds concept really came about through that teaching. And in my book, Enneagram in Real Life, which I'll mention here a little bit, I talk about thresholds for each type. What are some of those thresholds? Maybe it's not about conflict, but maybe it's about what's your concept of success or what's your concept of enough alone time, things like that. We all have these different lenses. And when we're in relationships, what we don't realize sometimes is that we're hitting against those thresholds. And that's what can cause some arguments or some fights or conflict in our relationships. As an example, this concept of thresholds is my application of it to the Enneagram. But if you've heard of Dan Siegel's work, he talks about windows of tolerance. And so, in a way, thresholds and windows of tolerance are a little bit similar. When we're operating outside our window of tolerance, that's when we can be really dysregulated. And so, I think in relationships, we often get into those times when we are dysregulated. And understanding that and recognizing that and working with that is how I think people can relate better with the Enneagram.
So when someone gets on our last nerve, our first instinct is to usually focus on what they're doing.
Mhm.
How does the Enneagram help us better understand what's happening inside of us
Yeah.
instead?
When I'm teaching the Enneagram, I always like to say instead of focusing on how everyone else could be better,
Mhm.
focus on yourself. What's going on inside of you? And that's kind of what we're tapping into with this is understanding, they're not getting on your last nerve because they're doing something wrong necessarily. It's because it's triggering some sort of response or igniting some sort of reaction in yourself. So let's tune into that. Why is this activating me? Why is this making me feel a little bit, some sort of way about the situation? Because I think that's where the real change can happen. We cannot control other people. We cannot control all the things that they do and the antics they get up to. And even sometimes what their patterns are, right? those patterns may be unhealthy, but they might be just fine and they might just trigger us in a certain way. And so
Okay.
that's where I want to bring the focus back to yourself and, look at how you want to change and how you can adapt to be different and how you can meet other people where they're at instead of expecting everyone to meet you where you're at.
For someone who's thinking about attending your workshop, what do you hope that they'll leave understanding about themselves or the people that they love that they don't understand now?
I think that what I want people to take away is that sometimes we have reactions and we have activations or responses and we even like might feel, quote unquote triggered by somebody else. And it doesn't mean that anyone is necessarily doing something wrong or something bad or we're wrong or bad, but that it's giving us some feedback. We're getting some data, we're getting some information that we can then work with. And that's really what I want people to take away because I think a lot of the time even in the Enneagram space, sometimes I hear feedback that it's really negative, and I just want to let people know that it's just highlighting something. And let's take a more positive approach and a more compassionate and especially self compassionate approach as we're learning how to engage with other people.
That's a great takeaway. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited that you're coming to join us for our third annual Enneagram Las Vegas Community Gathering. For those of you watching, if you'd like to learn more about Stephanie's workshop, I encourage you to check out our website, www.enneagramlasvegas.com. The gathering is taking place on September 11th and 12th at the South Point Hotel and Casino. Again, thank you so much, Stephanie. We are so excited to have you, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be a part of this.